And then we have Chicago. Lori Lightfoot, the woman who closed the barbershops and the hair salons and then got herself a haircut because she's the national face of Chicago, as she put it. Cut number 9.
Our big story on Hour 18. Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot sparking hope for restaurant and bar owners today, saying that she'd like to let them reopen for indoor dining, quote, as quickly as possible. She went on to say it's not just to help businesses survive, but to cut down on those packed private parties.
What has changed in Chicago and Virginia and elsewhere? For a year, they've been telling us that the virus would just get worse and worse and worse if you open the schools, if you open the restaurants. Now they're telling us they've got to open the schools and the restaurants.
Howie, I tweeted this out today and someone said, where does Ron DeSantis go to get his apology back? They were basically acting like he was voluntarily sacrificing people when he suggested this a few months ago.
Yeah, there was the governor of Iowa, Kim Reynolds. They wrote a piece in Atlantic saying that everybody in Iowa was going to be dead because she was allowing the Hawkeye state to open up. And guess what, Grace? Everybody in Iowa is still alive except for the people who were very old and very sick anyway. Where does she go to get her apology back?
Howie, it really does take a lot of courage as a leader to do something and then have a bunch of people tell you that, you know, you're going to kill everyone and everyone's going to die and this is going to be horrible. And to really stick with what you think is going to be true and not get freaked out by the media. And a lot of people did that. And I'm so glad they did, because now they're coming out and saying, oh, it looks like, you know, shutdowns didn't really help either way. So people like Kristi Noem and Ron DeSantis were right all along.
Right. I know. And, you know, I read somewhere recently, and I thought it was a great observation, that in the modern American society with, you know, the elites, you know, are a totally monolithic group ideologically. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if you're right or wrong, as long as you're on the side of the state. Right. Right. So you know, the fact that Northam, Lightfoot, Charlie Parker, Cuomo, Janet Mills, all these people, they were all totally wrong with what they did. And they killed thousands of people that didn't need to die in the case of Cuomo and Parker and Murphy in the nursing homes. But they will never feel the slings and arrows of outrageous media coverage, you know?
Well, Howie, I wrote about this and I said, you know, Governor Jim Justice from West Virginia, you don't really hear that story a lot, but he's had an incredible vaccine rollout. And he said it's just about getting it to the old people. That's all there is to it. And all of these governors like Baker and Andrew Cuomo, they overcomplicate everything.
Well, it's important to get it to the prisoners, Grace, so that they'll be healthy when they come back out to resume their careers in crime. And incidentally,
care community, is that what you mean? Congregate care community?
We don't call them nursing homes anymore. Again, this is like a Big Brother. We don't call them nursing homes because people remember what Charlie Parker and Andrew Cuomo did in the nursing homes. So we have to call them congregate care facilities. Now,
it's like in 1984 when instead of saying bad or terrible, they would just say ungood. They would say stop using words that are so specific. Just use the word ungood. If it's the opposite of good, it's ungood. It's not bad. It's just all about the language.
Yep. So what's the news, Grace?
Well, I have a very funny story. So remember a few days ago, I told you that Jake Tapper was making fun of Republicans who were complaining about how many Twitter followers they lost? And
yes.
He said, like, oh, I would tell you how many I lost, but I'm an adult. Well, it turns out that a lot of people on the Biden transition team are not adults, because this guy, David Mack, tweeted out, Twitter just released info on how they're going to archive the Trump governor accounts, the Trump Gov accounts, and transition to the Biden ones. Doug will also get a new official Gov account of whatever. So this guy, who I guess is Joe Biden's digital director, he wrote back to this and said, absolutely, profoundly insufficient. And so the guy who had posted the original tweet said, "Do
adverbs always, or not most times, a bad choice of words when you're writing or speaking. 2 adverbs in a row is always a bad choice when you're trying to communicate."
So this guy, David Mack, he figures, all right, I got Biden's digital director on the hook on this tweet. I might as well keep this guy going. So he says, do go on. And this is what Rob Flaherty writes. they're bending themselves over backwards to break with the 2017 protocol they set on the transfer of accounts, and also breaking with other social platforms and providing the new administration a follower base. In other words, we're not going to get Trump's Twitter followers. So the response is back to this guy. He got absolutely ratioed. It's amazing. Someone wrote, wait, I thought the proper response here was they're a private company. They can do what they want. And everyone was retweeting Jay Tapper's tweet, which was, I would tell you how many followers I have lost, but I have no idea how many because I'm an adult. But apparently Biden's team is not comprised of adults because they're really mad that. And then other people were saying, oh, so we're supposed to believe that this guy had 80 million people vote for him, but he's all upset because he's not getting Trump's Twitter followers. Like he can't build his own base of followers.
Well, he also got 80 million votes, but whenever he did one of those live basement halls, I'm not calling them town halls, basement halls, he would have a couple of thousand people on there, right?
Yeah.
Most popular candidate in American history, and he has 4,000 people watching.
I was saying this the other day, Howie. We used to have to watch some of his virtual stuff, whether it was in his basement or, if it was outside, like 10 feet away from the reporter, and they would be on YouTube. And I used to feel so uncomfortable because I'd look down at the follower count and it's like you feel like you're one of 5 people watching it. You know what I mean? You're like, why am I the only person in this chat right now?
Hey, is there a problem with my sound here on the YouTube? So what, we're getting like deluge with texts saying they can hear Grace, but they can't hear me.
Oh, okay. Well, Howie, they're working on it right now. But I'll tell you something else, Howie, while we wait for that to be fixed. AOC is demanding Biden follow through on stimulus. So this morning, Howie, I was looking for responses because I don't know. Even sometimes, even though I'm a Trump supporter and people on Twitter usually, for the most part, hate Trump, there were funny tweets. Like Trump brought out a lot of comedy with people on Twitter. And I was hoping there'd be some about Biden because he gave a speech last night. All of the tweets were slobbering. Oh, this is what it feels like to have a true leader. The feeling you're feeling right now, that's called comfort. And they were just pathetic tweets. But then I thought it was funny because I'm looking at the mainstream media today and they're all, saying he's saving the world. This is the best plan they've ever seen. And I was like, oh, this is going to be the longest 4 years of my life. And then it comes out that AOC is criticizing the stimulus because she said, you guys said 2,000. That doesn't mean 1,400. And I thought to myself, what does it say about the state of our media that the only person who is critical of Joe Biden, it's not like Jake Tapper or Chuck Todd
right.
or Brian Stelter. It's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Well, how about the fact that they're saying he's above the fray? You know what that means, Grace. He can't be bothered responding to these little things like the fact that his son said that he had to kick back 50% of all of his ill-gotten gains to the big guy. Because Joe is above the
fray. These people, Howie, and I have to think, I've been kind of thinking this over for the last couple of days, but Jack Dorsey taking Trump off Twitter has to be one of the stupidest business moves I've ever heard of because there were so many people.
But again, he doesn't care. It's like Jack Dorsey thinks of himself as running a sort of a digital registry of motor vehicles. He doesn't think there's any competition, and it doesn't matter.
Right.
And the goal of the registry of motor vehicles is not to provide services to the drivers of Massachusetts or any other government agency in any state. It's to provide jobs for the party faithful. Right.
Right.
I mean, and so Jack Dorsey is not working for the stakeholders. The stakeholders are the state.
Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. It's just so funny to me because so many people like my dad's age, they got on Twitter just to kind of see what it was all about because you turn on the news and they're not talking about what Trump said at a press conference. A lot of times they're talking about what he tweeted, at 3:30 in the morning. So now that he's not there anymore, it's really going to be strange to see what Joe Scarborough talks about every day. It's going to be hard for him to compare Trump to Hitler every single day when Trump isn't, on the front page anymore.
And that's the thing. I think the Democrats, or the sane ones, the few that are starting to have second thoughts about this impeachment trial because all you got to do is go to the Constitution and read that impeachment and the trial in the Senate is a vehicle to remove. That's the word they use. It's a very basic word, right? Remove. Everybody knows what remove means. You remove someone. Well, how can you remove someone who's not there, Grace?
No, I agree. But Howie, did you happen to see that or hear that sound from yesterday of Joe and Mika? Because he brought up that exact point on Morning Joe. And he said, I'm almost thinking that we might want to just skip this impeachment because, we can get to work and kind of start enforcing the agenda or whatever. I don't know.
Right. We can start stripping the deplorables of their
right
constitutional rights.
So I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said, maybe we skip the impeachment. And Mika, in true snowflake fashion, was like, you can't even ask that question. Don't ask that question ever again. And he said, I can't ask the question? Like, it was like Joe was starting to understand what he was dealing with at the Ministry of Truth. It's like, yeah, Joe, they're coming for you too.
Yeah.
Your own wife is silencing you. You're banned from asking questions on your own show.
Yeah, what they think is that the reign of terror that they're planning imposing on everybody who works for a living is going to be a one-way street. But if they think the reign of terror is a one-way street, they ought to Google a guy named Maximilian Robespierre and see how he ended up. The author of the Reign of Terror. I gotta write that column and post it on the website, Grace. I got all that stuff. I'll have time this weekend to do that.
Howie always uses Robespierre because he says revolutions eat their own. I always use the alligator, which is you can feed the alligator and he might not eat you first, but he's going to eat you eventually. So everyone who's feeding this beast and saying, oh, no, it's okay. And all these people on Twitter, all these people who it makes me depressed how dense people are getting because everyone's like, oh, I'm so glad Trump's gone. They can't see 5 feet ahead of them. Like you realize that this is a bad precedent to set for everybody else. There is a world after Trump.
Remember in Weimar, Germany, the brown shirts were the enforcers for the Nazis till they took over. And once the Nazis took over, guess what happened? What? The brown shirts got what they'd been giving to the communists and the Christian socialists and everybody else in the streets of Berlin and Munich in the Weimar Republic. They were eliminated.
I want to tell you one more thing I think you'll appreciate. So I had John Hinderaker on my show earlier, and we were talking about the journalists and the media. And we didn't talk about crowbar versus pro-bar, but that was just the latest example of, stupidity. But he was talking about how Congressman Louis Gohmert, quoted Nancy Pelosi. And I love this part of his column, and you guys can find it at Parallel.
No, I've got it printed out, Grace. Go ahead, read it, though.
He said, whatever you think of Twitter, it does have one virtue. It has exposed the carelessness and low intelligence of American journalists. And I just thought to myself, that is so true. If Twitter has given us one thing, it's we can see how bad the media is.
One last thing. They were these people that were watching Gohmert quote Nancy Pelosi said, did you hear what he just said, that he's surprised there aren't more rebellions? He should be immediately expelled from Congress for saying that. And nobody has come back and said, you know what? I didn't know Nancy Pelosi said that, but Nancy Pelosi should be expelled from Congress for saying that. You should only be expelled from Congress if you're a Republican like Louis Gohmert.
No, right. They pivoted right to Nancy Pelosi wore the same dress she wore at the first impeachment. She is such a boss.
She's above the fray.
Yeah, she's above the fray. All right.
All right,
thanks,
Grace.
Howie. I'll be back with Police Blotter Facts in a little bit.
All right. With Joe Biden as our new president, your home heating bills are about to start skyrocketing. But Eden Pure has a heater that will save you up to 50% on your heating bills. The Eden Pure, here it is right here if you're watching it on social media. The Eden Pure Gen 30 Classic Infrared Heater uses state-of-the-art infrared heat to warm you to the core. It's even been proven to keep you warmer than your furnace and save money on your heating bills every month. It may be a little bit warmer than it usually is in January in New England right now, but that's not going to last. And neither is the Trump economy. The Gen 30 heater doesn't dry out the air in the room. This helps prevent dry skin. And if you have pets or young kids around, you don't need to worry about the heater tipping over and catching fire. The Gen 30 heater has an automatic safety tip-over shut-off feature. With real wood surrounding the heater, it will look beautiful in your room, too. Don't be caught with huge heating bills in the new Biden era.
Even though it is warmer, as you said, Howie, I mean, it doesn't really matter. It takes a lot of energy to fire up your furnace for whatever reason, even if it's just for a few minutes. Just firing up the Eden Pure heater, takes a few seconds, and it keeps your room warm for as long as you want it to.
I'm in Florida, and when I sit down on the couch to read at night after I have dinner, I put it on anyway just to keep me warm. I like being warm and toasty. Eden Pure is extending their New Year's sale, so go to EdenPure.com and put in code HowieDeal. You'll receive an extra $25 off their lowest sale price and free shipping with code word HowieDeal. This is a great deal, so order now at EdenPure.com. Eden Pure, never be cold again. I'm Howie Carr.
You're listening to the Howie Carr Radio Network.